People who have gone out for a pack of cigarettes and never went back to your family. What happened after you left? Serious. I wish I knew the whole story, but my dad took off when I was 12. I found out years later he was still talking to my siblings. He just didn't want to talk to me. I'm so sorry. That must have felt awful. His loss though. I hadn't started a family of my own yet, but I was engaged to my ex who I just ended up ghosting after a few years. It was several years ago and he had to move back to Tokyo for his job. We met in the US while he was an expat, so he asked me to come live with him. Moved, met the family, all that stuff. Then, one day I came down with the flu and was miserable and was so weak I couldn't even walk myself to the toilet. He was trying to come on to me several times that day and I kept refusing because of obvious reasons. Then I was in the middle of sleeping and he started to take off my clothes and frick me while I was sleeping after already refusing it to him. I woke up and was like WTF and made him stop. Then I pretended to be asleep till he left for work the next morning, packed my crap, and left. Dropped the key off at concierge and hurried out of that building in a huge panic. Never spoke to him again. Cut off all contact immediately. I booked hotels for a couple of weeks and met my, now, husband. That's not ghosting, that's escaping. Frick that guy. Congrats on getting out. I moved out when I was 15. I was living with my mom, sister, and older brother. It was my older brother's house. His house was unlivable. The water was orange. There were fleas and ticks everywhere. And, because of his 11 cats that kept reproducing because they were never spayed neutered, there were piles of cat poop against the walls. On top of that, my mom was a textbook narcissist, always going out and partying, passing out drunk, smoking pot and snorting coke, the works. She went to Myrtle Beach for a week. I mentioned it to my best friend, who invited me to stay at her place until my mom came back. Halfway through the week, her mom invited me to live with them. I said yes and stayed there until I left for the Navy 2.5 years later. I still talk to my parents sometimes, but it's an estranged relationship at best. I'm almost 23 and happily married, which I didn't even tell my family about until a year after, so I suppose it all worked out in the end. Mine was I'm going to the gas station. I'm in an interfaith and interracial relationship, and my family never ever accepted it. It escalated to physical violence and I needed to make an exit. I let my mom know I wanted to marry him. She told me I could stay and be less than the dirt under her shoe or I could go. I left. It's been 3 years. I went back once to get my clothes, but haven't been back. It's been super trying. They still have some contact with me, but refuse to accept my one and only boundary. Show me that you can even freaking acknowledge my fiance, and then we can start rebuilding. Ultimately, I had to walk away from a place where I was being punished for not doing my duty as a daughter, which is putting my happiness second to the respect of the family name. This was the first time in my life I ever truly wanted something just for me, and they couldn't handle it. So now, they're stuck in a place where I'm the bad guy, and I'll always be the bad guy, because to them I should be falling over myself to get my moms to forgive me and I just don't. It's really opened my eyes to how toxic my family actually is, and how conservatively I was being raised. My biggest sadness is that my brothers, who I love very dearly, cannot fathom going against my mom. But I'm a better and healthier person now, and I would never go back. Even if you told me I would love a normal life with all of my family talking to me. TTO clarify some things. 1. I meant mom not moms. My bad. 2. I am Arab and Muslim, and my fiance is Catholic and Polish American. I did not initially say what our faiths or ethnicities were because I didn't think it mattered a ton, and I didn't want the comments to skew into a Muslim hate fest. If I'm Hones, especially because I do still practice my religion, just perhaps not to the level my family would want me to. I know from looking online for guidance that lots of families won't accept their child so for what are frankly dumb reasons. Gender, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, whatever. All of these reasons are bulls. Accept that your kid will make decisions for themselves, and remember that ultimately they don't live for you. 3 fiancés somewhere down below also responding, in case you want his perspective on the whole thing. 4 fiancé and I met like anyone else. He was actually the brother of my college friend. We chatted online for a while. and we made it official. I think the only real difference is that I had to make a really big decision early in our relationship. I understood the potential consequences, but it was all worth it. It was by no means easy though. What you're reading about now is 3 years worth of dedication and trust in each other. You made the right decision. Props. I only know one story about this kind of thing, and it was my dad's best childhood friend. He was I don't know if you still call it that after that long, recovering drug addict. He was addicted to cocaine when he was in his teens to early 20s, 30ish years ago, and back then lost a lot of money due to gambling and he got into a relationship with a woman back then who was supporting his bad habits and exploiting him for money, but he turned his life back around, left her, gave up his addiction, moved away for some time, found a wife, got a family, but the drugs and debt left a scar and he became depressed, which I didn't knew after he died. As long as I've known him, he was always a happy person. He and my dad have known each other since what Americans would call high school. My dad supported him in his worst times and vice versa. Apparently he sought counseling the last year and got better for a time, but went into a strong depression a few weeks before the incident. My dad told me that the drugs left a big dent in him and he heard voice telling him to do bad stuff for quite some time. But he told his wife it had stopped and even stopped going to counseling after getting better for like 5 days. His last day, he was at my dad's house. Before, he told his wife and daughter that he'd visit my dad. Wasn't an unregular action. They'd hang out quite often, and there he was as happy as always. They even made plans for the next day to go to a sauna when he left. But on his way home he just parked his car next to the road and jumped off a bridge onto a street below. They said it was probably planned beforehand and he just came over to say goodbye. I've only seen my father cry twice, but this one was the worst. He became completely unfunctional for a week, didn't go to work and stayed at home. His death affected my dad more than anything I've ever seen. I know this sounds cliche, but if you have any form of depression, seek help and don't let go of it. They tell you what drugs can do to you physically, but not what they might do to you mentally almost 20 years after you stopped with them. I have no idea what depression feels like and I can't imagine what it must be like when your own brain tries to kill you hallucinating stuff, and I'm glad for it every day. But I know if someone came to me asking for help, I'd do anything in my power to help them. Because no one should have to go through that kinda stuff. Again, I don't really know anything about what depression feels like, but I know what it can do to everyone involved, so getting any help is better than letting it taking over. But saying that is probably harder than doing that. TLDR, my dad's best friend goes out to meet at my dad's place but kills himself on the way back. I did this. My parents are A-grade buttholes, and at the age of 16 I overheard my mother telling my sister I was being kicked out soon. So I took matters into my own hands, packed my crap and left at 2 AM. They didn't notice for a couple of days. I put an ad in the local paper for free stuff, which was every bit of furniture I left there. They rang my other sister, who I moved in with, and was so mad. Not that I had left, more that I had given all their stuff away. Fast forward 20 years and I still don't have a relationship with my parents. They call me once or twice a year to ask for money, which the answer is always a firm frick no. I heard around town that they were upset I just vanished in the middle of the night. They had to keep up their public image. When I was 16, my relationship with my mother hit rock bottom. We had never gotten along really at all, and my pending possession of marijuana charge definitely didn't help it. Illegal southern state, Christian family. At this time we were living with a different family, due to some financial problems we were having, who also saw me and what I do as pure sin. One night I overheard the upstairs family talking to my parents. Yes, that's what we call them. We lived in their basement FFS, and they were giving my parents heck about me, calling me a drug dealer, saying how unwelcome I am in their home, and at one point I even heard the wife call me a crackhead. I decided that this was going to be the first time I ever actually acted on my own whim. I packed up my things while I pretended to be asleep, and I left the next day when everyone went to work. I moved in with my grandparents and I've never gone back. My mother and I still talk. My stepfather wants nothing to do with me, and I don't intend on speaking to the upstairs family again. My mother went to get a pack and dinner. She got pulled over. From what I understand, She kept moving her purse around and the cops searched it. She had coke and weed in it. I knew she smoked weed, but no clue she did coke. Ended up moving in with my father, divorced, an ugly one. While I was initially upset, I realized it was probably the best thing to happen to me, moving in when my father allowed me to do so many different things, and I'm almost positive that if I didn't I wouldn't have gone to college and started out a great career in IT. I really haven't talked to her since then. I had to. He was abusive and would play mind games. I planned it out for weeks and seized the little chances I got. I slowly started moving my things out. One time he noticed it looking kind of bare and I played it off like my stuff was too cluttered and I wanted a more open space. He went on a work trip for 2 days and I vanished. Needless to say, he was not pleased when he realized I was gone. I was hiding out with my dad and he would show up and call all hours of the day and night. My parents more or less told him to go to heck. I did, and most days I don't regret it. My parents divorced when I was young, and I never really had any contact with my father. My mother was emotionally abusive growing up, and never failed to say I was overweight or a failure. My stepfather was always super strict, and we simply never got along. The summer after I graduated from high school, my stepfather lost his job. This caused my mother to go into a downward spiral, causing her to starve herself and constantly scream at the people around here. My stepdad always came up with reasons to not be home, and they almost divorced over it. My mother took $800 from my own paychecks to help pay the bills without my permission. After she did that, I finally had enough. The day I got a new job where I knew I could afford to live on my own, I got the heck out within a couple days. I moved all of my own stuff out their house and never looked back. It had probably drove my mother off the edge, but I don't regret doing it at all. Fast forward to now, they ended up moving to a new state and I don't talk to any of them. The whole situation has caused my brothers and sister to not want to talk to me, but I understand. I still struggle terribly, having anxiety attacks and spouts of depression often. It's hard not having any family to talk to when things get rough, but I would never have it any other way. I am sorry. Hope you're doing good. My mom left when I was 10. In hindsight, I think my dad saw it coming because we took a spur of the moment trip to my aunt's house 9 hours away. My mom wanted to take my little sister with her, so that was the best way to keep that from happening. My half brother, on my mom's side, stayed home so he could work. He called my dad saying that he saw mom just drive by and not come home. Needless to say, we headed home that night to her having taken everything she could fit in the car and headed to Georgia, the entire country away from us. We received birthday cards for the first year and then she fell off the face of the earth. When I was 16, we got a call from one of my other sisters telling me she had died at age 45 of natural causes. Her actual children weren't even listed as next of kin to be notified. Her sister-in-law still tries to extort money from us after 7 years. That's Sue. No, that's not good enough. I can't express how sucky that is. Not my story, but a few years ago my ex-friend messaged me in hysterics. Apparently, they took her oldest out for dinner for his 18th birthday the night before and she said everything was great. The day she called me he turned 18. They, her and her husband, his stepdad, woke up to find the son was gone. He had packed up all of his stuff in the middle of the night and just left. No note, no call, nothing. He moved in with his dad, I guess, and hasn't spoken to them since. It's been 3 years. Come to find out, she and her husband are terribly abusive to their kids. They don't know this, but her second oldest son turns 18 this year and he too plans on moving out that day and never speaking to them again. Seriously, they are terrible parents. The oldest kid is doing amazing now. I didn't actually do it, but my ex-boyfriend did. We had been dating for 3 years by the time I got pregnant. We broke up early into my pregnancy, but we remained civil with each other. We were young. I lived with my parents and he lived with his dad and 3 brothers. Never seen his mother. He told me she left him and his brothers behind when he was about 5 and moved to another state. One day, he came to me and told me he had been talking to his mom. He was happy about it, and I was happy for him. Time went on, and eventually he told me that his mother paid for a round-trip ticket for him and his brothers to go and visit her. Long story short, he left and never came back. Our son is 3 years old and he has never met him, never spoken to him, and never told his family about him either. He used to ask me about him here and there, but that eventually stopped too. His entire plan was to leave me pregnant and alone, without telling his family about this. He sort of brushed my child under the rug. He has had another baby since, and is completely involved in her life. I was a freshman in high school, about 14-15 years old. I was living with my dad and, now ex, stepmom in less than ideal conditions, mostly emotional abuse and neglect. After talking to my friends and a trusted teacher about what I should do, I decided to see if I could move back in with my mom. I didn't tell my dad or ex stepmom. I just stayed home from school that day and called my mom to come get me. I didn't have too much time to prep because my dad would have caught on. So I had 30 minutes to throw the things I wanted to keep in a garbage bag, grab my cat, and leave. The worst part of the storm came when I decided that going back for a weekend visit was the right thing to do. My father sat me down, screamed in my face for 3 hours, and told me how I would never really be his daughter again. He wouldn't even let me get tissues to blow my nose. I had to sit there with thick ropes of snot running down my face while he etched the words, "You're my daughter," but into my heart. His whole thing was he was disappointed that I didn't tell him I was moving. The man partially responsible for the abuse and neglect. The kicker to the whole thing is that he left our family, my mom, myself, my little sister, without telling anyone when I was 7. I really wanted to throw that in his face. I learned it from you. I don't think he'd find it as funny as I do. I don't know if this counts, but when I was 17 I was on probation and I had a curfew for it. Well, I had met this girl and we hooked up. I fell asleep and I woke up and I had a text from my mom saying that because I didn't come home that night she called my probation officer and told her that I missed my curfew, so my PO put out a detention order for me and that the police were looking for me and to come home. Well, I wasn't going for that crap, so I told the girl I hooked up with what was up and we talked to her parents what was up. They let me stay with them and her dad gave me a job at his company so I could save up enough to go where I was gonna go. So about a month into this, me and her dad were talking and he told me he liked how I worked and that if I wanted to I could turn myself in and he would help me fight my case and go to bat for me, and in return I could work for him, and I could continue staying with him because my home life wasn't that great. So naturally I thought that was a better deal than being on the run and being caught later down the line. It's better to go in on your own terms. So that's what I did. We talked to my PO and she agreed not to send me to detention while I'm fighting my case, and I just stayed with them. Not married or with kids, but siblings and parents, thus everyone else in the family. But I parked my car 2 blocks over, told my neighbors I had someone stalking me that would tell them they were my family, and spent about an emergency month finding a new city to live in, then doing the move from my stuff to the U-Haul at 2 AM. I regret the 2 AM move. I'm sure it wasn't quiet. I liked and tried to respect my neighbors, even now, and lying to them was fricked up, but it was more acceptable than asking them to lie for me to the face of my ex-family that were trying to track me down. They'd know if my neighbors were lying, that something was up, to keep nosing about. I seriously don't know what happened next. I never want to inquire to find out. They have money to hire a private investigator. They would. I don't want to make it easier for them by showing back up in the same old places I was before to see what happened in the aftermath with them. First thing I did landing here was introduce myself to the neighbors, get on a first name basis, like I always did before this ever had to happen. Good to be respected in the neighborhood. Even better to have people who'll tell you if someone is nosing about. I'm probably out of the will, and out of almost $1 million of inheritance, but frick that. Happiness, security and lack of paranoia is worth it. I didn't leave a spouse and kids, but I enlisted in the Navy without telling any of my family, only confided in a few friends that I was joining the service and skipping town. I had graduated high school, was depressed working crap dead-end jobs and wasn't making enough to move out on my own. I told my parents I had enlisted the day the recruiter came to take me to MEPS, and I've only been back to Texas twice in the last 10 years, the latter time to introduce them to my wife. My parents are essentially absent from my life of their own choosing. I found that if I didn't call, I didn't hear from them. So I stopped calling. They've met my oldest daughter twice in her 6 years and have only met my younger once. They don't try. I haven't got time for people whom I only find out another relative has passed away via text message. I haven't got time for people who didn't recognize issues in my childhood that I am dealing with as an adult. I just haven't got time for them. I have my own family, and as far as I care, my wife and kids are my only family. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.